welcome back to another edition of This Week in the XFL. I'm your host, as always, the referee representing XFL Newsroom, the number one source in XFL news. And I know we say we have a huge week for you a lot, but this week we got a huge news week for you. We're talking about the brand new XFL rules. But before we get started, we just wanted to remind you we have a giveaway going on. You can win 2 tickets to any XFL game this season. You'll have to find your own way there, but we'll get you the tickets to enjoy the game. All you gotta do is like, comment, subscribe, and click the link down in the description for the Discord. Get up to at least a rookie status. It's only about 50 or 60 posts, but the good news is you'll be hanging out with a bunch of other like-minded XFL fans just like you and me. So before we get into the rules, we're going to talk about a couple items. The first one we're going to touch upon here is the quarterback situation up in Dallas. So if you haven't heard yet, earlier this week, Tier 1 quarterback Landry Jones unfortunately sustained a knee injury, and it looks like he's going to be out for about 4 to 6 weeks. So that means he's going to miss that first game, maybe even that second, and hopefully all goes well and he'll be back for the third. Well, that left the Renegades in a bit of a predicament as they only had one other quarterback on the team, Philip Nelson. Well, one day after the injury was announced, the Renegades had announced they had signed a new quarterback. So former Syracuse quarterback Eric Dungy is signed with the Dallas Renegades. So he's a pretty decent quarterback, pretty solid. He took the Syracuse Orange to a 10-3 record. He bounced around between a couple teams. He was even on some practice squads last year, but here he is now in the XFL representing the Renegades. So I know there's probably a lot of Renegades fans that were upset to hear about Landry Jones, but I think ultimately they got a very good pick here, and it's going to get them through those first couple weeks. And now in all reality, they have 3 solid quarterbacks up in Dallas. So if you're a Houston fan like myself, you may be a little bit worried about that, but only time will tell. At least by the time that we play the Renegades later in the season, I assume that Landry Jones will be back in action. But hey, what do you think about the signing of Eric Dungy? Let us know down in the comments below. Or like we mentioned earlier, head over to that Discord. There's a very good discussion going on over there on this subject right now. So we're gonna move on to a little bit of front office news, or maybe some just more paperwork news. But you know, the league is coming to, it's about to kick off here in about a month, under a month now. We're under a month from XFL kickoff, and that means the league is wrapping up all their loose ends. And one of those loose ends is getting proper betting in place, and more importantly, making sure that they're on the up and up for the players and the coaches. So they've recently signed a deal with Genius Sports to monitor their betting and to really keep an integrity program within the XFL. So Genius Sports is a London-based company. They work with other sports leagues like PGA and English Premier League, and now they're working with the XFL. And basically during these training camps and throughout the season, they're gonna work with the coaches and players and kind of tell them what they can and can't do, just to make sure, again, like we said, everything is on the up and up. So basically from their deal, this is what they're getting is Genius provides monitoring of all pregame and live betting markets, including alerts and analyst of odds movements. At the XFL training camp, like we mentioned, they're doing some conferences or sit downs with the coaches and players just to kind of go over what's savory, what's not. And they also provide an online portal where staff and officials can be trained on league regulations and the importance of integrity, things like that. So like we mentioned. So, you know, going back to our conversation that we've had throughout the year here, the XFL is doing things right this time around. Everything from, you know, getting the right people in the right places, making the right decisions, as well as this deal right here. So we got the little stuff out of the way. Now we're talking about the big stuff. We're gonna go over all of the new XFL rules. Well, they're not really, well, they are new, but they're the first set of rules for this XFL, the 2020 rule set. And quite honestly, it's pretty exciting. We were lucky enough to join a conference call with CEO and Commissioner Oliver Luck, as well as new head of officiating Dean Blandino, which I know you know that name. You've probably seen him on Fox Sunday during some of these football games in the past years. Well, now he's working in an official capacity with the XFL. We know he was consulting with the league earlier this year, but now this is his official role, and he's going to help kind of get those officials in place, get everything in order, and kind of run through, make sure everything, like we talked about with Genius Sports, is on the up and up. There's been a lot of, problems in the NFL as of recently with their officials, and I think the XFL is trying to avoid that by making a much more clear rule set to where it's not so much dependent on the officials. In speaking in that conference call, we asked him what was the most important factor that went into creating this rule set, and Oliver Luck, he kind of gave a good example of things that they were trying to do, right? They want to create a fast-paced game, but they also want it to be traditional. They want the players to understand the game. They don't want to have to teach the players, a whole new rule set, rather just a few new rules. So he expanded on that by talking about the halo rule on the kickoff and the punts. Originally they were trying to do a 5-yard halo around each of the players, and as he explained it, it was just a little too difficult to teach American football players that halo rule, just how to respect that, how to see that 5 yards in front of them. So it's different, so we see the CFL doing this, but not a lot of these guys are from the CFL. So they decide to nix that rule completely, which is good, because one thing that they don't want to do is change the rules throughout the season. They want to take this rule set, make it all the way through 2020, then they'll assess and see if anything needs to be changed. So if they were having any issues with anything, so that one being an example, they just completely cut it out, which is smart. But we're gonna get into the rules here. So basically the way they broke it down is they have 3 different sections here with 5 different key elements. So they have 5 gameplay innovations, so the kickoff, the point after touchdowns, the punt, the double forward pass, not multiple forward pass, but we'll get there, and overtime. Moving to the 5 timing changes, we have the 25-second play clock, much faster than the NFL and college and CFL for that matter. The comeback period, so the last few minutes of a game. The running game clock, timeouts, and replay rulings. And then moving on to their 5 common sense rules. The 1 foot inbound, so similar to college there. Ball spotting official, we talked about that before, but we'll get to it here later. Coach-player communication, so the microphones and the headset. Simplified illegal man downfield, and a shorter halftime. And we'll get to that stuff later. So the XFL provided us with a few video packages that at least touch on the 5 gameplay innovations. So we're gonna switch over to Dean Blandino to explain the kickoffs here for us.
This is the XFL kickoff. This is about creating more opportunities for big plays. To eliminate high-speed collisions, we're shortening the distance between opposing players. The coverage team starts on the opponent's 35-yard line, and the return team starts on their own 30. When the ball is first kicked, only the kicker and receiver can move. But once it's caught or is on the ground for 3 seconds, all players are free to run, block, and tackle. We're giving players and coaches the chance to create kickoff excitement. This is for the love of football. This is the XFL.
So as you saw from the video package, the kickoffs are a little bit different here in the XFL, but nothing too vastly different. So the kicker is going to kick from the 25-yard line and must kick the ball in the air and in play between the opponent's 20-yard line and end zone. You're gonna get penalized if you go out of bounds or if you go past that end zone. The coverage team lines up on the return side's 35-yard line, and the return team lines up at the 30. So again, a little bit different from that NFL. And a big reason that they're doing that is there's not a lot of reason to make your players run that far down the field. One, is gonna wear them out, and with this faster play that they're trying to do, you don't wanna wear out your players on a kickoff or a punt, right? Out of bound kicks, like we mentioned, you're gonna get penalized. Out of bound kicks and kicks that fall short of that 20-yard line will result in a legal procedure penalty. taking the ball all the way to the 45-yard line. So it's something you really don't want to do. They're trying to get away from those coffin corner kicks, things like that. Players can move once the ball is touched or if the ball has been on the ground for 3 seconds. So basically the defense has to hold their spot until one of those two things happen. If the ball is kicked in the end zone, right, that's a major touchback and the ball is placed at the 35. And if the ball bounces inbounds and then out of the end zone, it's down at the end zone and the ball is placed at the 15-yard line. So a lot of this is to really just keep plays going. It's to give incentive, have these proper kicks. And again, a lot of the emphasis here is on the safety, right? You want the safety of the players. You don't need them running all up and down the field. And the other piece of it is by creating these different rule sets is you're hopefully creating a situation where you're going to get more punt returns, things of that nature because of the way that the players are configured and the rules are set up. So now we're going to move over to the point after touchdowns. We spoke about this before, the 1, 2, and 3 point conversion, but we'll switch over to Dean Blandino again to explain these ones for us.
This is the XFL point after touchdown. This is about raising the stakes and stepping up the strategy. In the XFL, the scoring team has 3 different point after touchdown options, and none of them involve a kicker. The first option is an offensive play from the 2-yard line worth 1 point. The second is a play from the 5-yard line worth 2 points. And the third is an aggressive play from the 10 that earns 3 points. The scoring team's offense only gets one chance to convert whatever option they choose. And if they fail to convert, they get nothing. And the defense can score too. If they get a turnover and return it to the opposite end zone, they get the same amount of points the offense was attempting.
That's 3, baby, that's 3!
So now there are more chances for teams to come back, and no lead is ever really safe. This is for the love of football. This is the XFL.
So this one's pretty straightforward. You have 3 chances after a touchdown. None of them involve a kicker. You can go for 1 point, 2 point, or 3 points, all starting from the 2, the 5, and the 10-yard line. So once you get to that 3-point extra play, it's getting a little risky, but that 2 and 5, I expect we're gonna see a lot of those. Just looking at my local team, the Houston Roughnecks, I know June Jones probably loves this rule. He's a man that likes points, and these are extra points. So all in all, this gives teams the option to go for a 9-point play on every touchdown, right? So a little bit different from the NFL where you can either go 7, right, for the kick or 8 with a 2-point conversion, either a run or a pass. And then similar here, if a player intercepts the ball or gets it off of a fumble, if they run it back to their end zone, they're gonna get the points that team was going for. So again, if the team is going for a 3-point conversion, the other team intercepts it, runs it all the way back, they're getting 3 points. Overall, I think this is one of the more exciting rules in the league. I'm really excited to see how this plays out. A big thing that the league, we know, at least with their overtime, and we'll get that here, they don't want ties. And I think with something like this, you're not going to get a lot of ties. You're going to have a lot of opportunity to score, a lot of opportunities to get back in the game, and we'll talk about that with the end of the game period here, the comeback period. But now we're moving on to punts, so let's switch over to that video package one more time.
This is the XFL punt. This is about coaches thinking twice about punting or going for it on 4th down. In the XFL, if a punt goes into the end zone, the receiving team gets the ball on their 35. And forget about coffin corner kicks. Punts that travel out of bounds are placed at the 35 too, or where the ball left the field, whichever is better for the receiving team. Plus, the punting team can't cross the line of scrimmage until the ball is kicked. So the receiving team is less likely to call for a fair catch and more likely to return it. We're making the punt more about coaches going for it on 4th down. So get ready to get loud, because a crazy return or 4th down conversion could be coming up. This is for the love of football. This is the XFL.
So again, very similar, a little bit different. Punting team cannot release past the line of scrimmage until the ball is kicked, right? Gunners must line up at the line of scrimmage and are permitted to move laterally once the ball is snapped until it is kicked, right? If the ball goes out of bounds inside the 35-yard line, it's a major again, and it's going back and being placed on that 35-yard line. And if the punted ball lands in the opponent's end zone or goes out of the end zone, it's another major touchback, 35-yard line. Fair catches are permitted, though de-incentivized, right? So we'll get to that here in a little bit. Moving over to the double forward pass. This is a big one. We had spoke about this before. Wasn't sure if it was multiple forward passes, meaning more than two or two, but it has been clarified. It's 2 forward passes are allowed behind the line of scrimmage. But let's head over to the video package on this one.
This is the XFL double forward pass. This is about offensive creativity. Typically in football, only 1 forward pass is allowed. So if you want to try one of those tricky double passes, that first pass has to be a lateral, and those are risky. Not in the XFL. In our game, 2 forward passes are allowed as long as the ball doesn't cross the line of scrimmage until that second pass. So the game speeds up and the playbook opens wide up, creating exciting and unique opportunities for dual threat players. This is for the love of football. This is the XFL.
So as you can see, it's a little bit different than the NFL here, and as we mentioned, it's only 2 passes. Both of those passes need to happen behind the line of scrimmage. Once you throw the ball past the line of scrimmage, even if it's your first pass, you can no longer throw again. If you do somehow get a third pass off, that's incomplete. That's a penalty there, so that's not going to count. But overall, I think this is exciting. I think we're going to see a lot of plays from various different coaches. I could definitely see June Jones doing this in Houston, Bob Stoops up in Dallas, various coaches across the league, maybe some Kevin Gilbride action in there as well. You know, he is the quarterback whisperer. But overall, this is going to be an exciting rule. I think we're going to see a lot of fun plays out of this, and it's just another way that's not making the XFL gimmicky, but it's still a little bit different here. So now moving on to probably the most exciting change, at least for me, overtime. We're going to move over to Dean Blandino one more time to give us that video package.
This is the XFL overtime. This is about edge-of-your-seat, game-ending action. There's no coin toss, no one-possession wins, and no ties. Instead, XFL overtime is a shootout. So the best players on both sides always determine who wins the game. Each offense gets up to 5 one-play possessions to score from the 5-yard line. Teams get 2 points for each successful conversion. Teams alternate plays until one team is mathematically eliminated. The defense can't score, but if they make a stop or create a turnover, the play is dead. The team with the most points after the 5-round shootout wins. If it's tied after 5 rounds, then things go to single rounds until one team scores and the other doesn't. Because this is winner-take-all kind of football. This is for the love of football. This is the XFL.
So as you can see, this is much different than the NFL, right? So in the XFL's rule, at least both teams have the opportunity to touch the ball and have a chance to win. We'll get to the coin toss, but basically, the home team, there is no coin toss. They pick if they're kicking or receiving at the beginning of the game, and if it goes into overtime, the away team chooses who goes first. And it's a lot similar to, soccer or hockey, where it's shootout style. Originally, we were told or thought that both teams would be on the field at the same time, offense and defense on the other, and the reverse offense and defense on the other end zone. But in the conference call with Oliver Luck and Dean Blandino, they had mentioned they're still testing that out, still trying to figure out how they want to do it. So it's not a guarantee that we're going to see, both offense and defense on the field at the same time. But it works like this. If you score, you get 2 points, either by a pass or a run. The other team can intercept it and get those 2 points as well. And whoever has the most points after 5 rounds is the winner of the game. Like we mentioned earlier, there is no ties in the XFL. So if it's still tied after that 5th round, it becomes sudden death. Whoever scores without the other team scoring wins that game. Now, nobody wants to see overtime if it's your home team, but I really am hoping I at least get to see one overtime game in person this year. I'll settle if it's on TV. I'll be watching all the games anyway. But overall, these are some fun rules. Those are the some of those innovations. But we're going to move on to the 5 timing changes here, right? Some things that are again similar but a little bit different. The big one is that 25-second play clock. So that's a big difference from the NFL and even college and CFL for that matter, or AAF. You are creating a fast-paced game. So basically it takes 7 seconds on average to spot the ball, creating a 32-second play. The rationale here is clearly speed up the game. We wanted to minimize the downtime between plays. Now when you have that fast game clock, well, you're minimizing it here. The staffs and teams, they're going to provide what fans want, and that's more of a football game. Now here's a big one too, the comeback period. So this is the last 2 minutes of each half. And then plays that end in the field of play, the clock will be stopped in that comeback period, giving teams a better chance of getting back into that game, not getting penalized or having to rush for that game clock. And I think this is smart. We may see this evolve as the seasons go on, but I think they're trying to find that good middle ground here. On incomplete passes and out-of-bound plays, the clock will stop altogether until the ball is snapped. I like it. I'm excited to see that. So another timing innovation here is that running game clock. So again, this is similar to soccer as well. So outside the last 2 minutes of the half, the game clock will run after incompletions and out-of-bound plays. So again, the league is trying to keep these games under 3 hours, realistically around that 2.5 hour mark. We could see this change in the future, but right now that's what they're working with. A lot of it probably has to do with the TV deals they had. I think they learned from their mistakes with the original league, looking at that week 2 game that went into triple overtime and pushed Saturday Night Live off, right, and had bumped it and delayed it. They don't want to run into that again. They want to keep their broadcast partners happy, and I think this is a good way to do it. So again, running game clock, we're getting excited. So now moving on to timeouts, and this one's a little bit different too. So each team is going to have 2 1-minute timeouts per half, so that's a little bit different from the NFL. Again, each team has 3, but we have 2 timeouts per half for each of those coaches, 1 minute each. And so I think that's fine, and there is no challenges. There are no coaching challenges. I believe we're going to get to that a little bit later here. But basically, it's all going to come down to the officials looking at the replays, and we'll get to that here. Actually, replay ruling. So no coaches challenges. All plays will be subject to review from the replay official who will be stationed in a booth above the field. So similar to the Alliance, we're going to have something like the Sky Ref here. They're going to be in charge of reversing plays, especially, and this was mentioned during that conference call, if it involves player safety. That's a big thing with this league. They've done a lot of work, brought in a lot of consultants as they made this journey to make sure that player safety is a key thing here. Reviewable plays are limited to a few here. Plays involving possession, plays involve touching of either the ball or the ground. So maybe it bobbled or it might be incomplete. Maybe it hit the ground before you caught it, things like that. Plays governed by the goal line. So, if you score, it's going to be a reviewable play. Plays governed by the boundary line. So out of bounds, things like that. Governed by the line of scrimmage, offsides, Governed by the line to gain. Number of players on the field at the time of snap, right? Game administration, penalty enforcement, proper down, spot of the foul, status of the game clock, disqualification of a player, again, that player safety here. And that's basically what they're looking to do here. There's a few exceptions. The replay official may correct obvious errors involving player safety at any point in the game. We kind of touched on that earlier. And the replay official may correct obvious errors that may have some significant impact on the outcome of the game. So let's say they realize that a touchdown shouldn't have counted earlier in the game. It is a possibility that they revoke it, maybe into the second half. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit risky. I think some fans might end up being upset by that, but this is what you have to do. You kind of have to test these things in play, and I think we'll probably see some of these change throughout the next season. But hey, we got to get through that first season first, and we're less than 1 month away, and I couldn't be more excited. So now we're moving on to the last group here, the 5 common sense rules. So this one I love, 1 foot in bounds. So very similar to college, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a foot, but 1 body part in bounds, as long as you have control of that ball, counts as a catch. So meaning, are you doing that football play? If you have the ball and you go out of bounds and it's loose and it falls and you don't have control, that's probably not going to count. But if you have 1 foot in bounds, 1 finger in bounds before any of your body lands out of bounds, that's going to be a catch. So basically, you just have to maintain that ball, 1 body part in bounds. I like it. This is another big one, dedicated ball spotting official. So as we mentioned, there's a lot of time wasted in the NFL moving that marker. Well, this official, his only job is to spot the ball, see where it belongs, put the marker there. He doesn't call any other fouls, penalties in the game. His only job is to place that marker. So they're looking to they're expecting to shave at least a few seconds off of each play by just having this dedicated ball spotting official. So again, keeping that fast pace, I like it. I know some players are probably going to get a little tired, and maybe they hope that they didn't have something like this in play. We'll see. But I think that's why this is going to be an exciting game. This is another one here, the coach to player communication. So they're still trying to work out which players and how many players are going to have this, but it's going back to having the microphones inside the helmets of the offense. We've heard that maybe a few defensive players will have it as well, but this is, the expectation here is to limit the huddle. Maybe, you're losing 1 timeout, so having that direct communication with your players is going to be huge. I'm looking forward to seeing this in play. I'm looking forward to seeing this in replays where we hear the audio. I'm hoping this is a part of the XFL app where we can listen to the coaches talking to their players in real time if you're at the game or watching it on TV. Either way, this is what the XFL does. They innovate. You look at the original XFL, they innovated the sky cam. Well, now we're innovating these helmet cams. And moving on to the next is the simplified illegal man downfield. So no ineligible player shall be or have been more than 3 yards beyond the line of scrimmage until a player throws a legal forward pass. So if you have that multiple forward pass, that could count. That crosses the line of scrimmage. So it needs to be that second multiple pass, as long as it goes past that line of scrimmage here. And a player is in violation of this rule if any part of his body is beyond that 3-yard limit. And now this is the last one here, and I think some players are going to be very tired because of this one, but we have a shorter halftime. 10 minutes. Now that's a short halftime, but again, like we said, the league is trying to keep these games around 2 to 2.5 hours, 3 hours max. And these are the things that you're going to have to do. And again, maybe this is one of those things they'll change next year or as they create new broadcast deals in the future to extend those times out. But we'll see how this plays out. And again, like we mentioned during that conference call, Oliver Luck says he's committed to these rules for the full season, right? We don't want to change them. If they have to, if it comes down to player safety, they will evaluate instantly. But if it comes down to it, they'd rather make it through the full season, assess at the end of the season, and go from there. Overall, I'm loving these rules. There's not one that I hate. I think they're great. These are going to make for an exciting new brand of football. More ball, less stall. Let's get excited and signed up. But what do you think of the rules? Let us know down in the description. Click on the link. Go to the Discord. Join the conversation and hang out with a bunch of like-minded XFL fans. It's a good time. We've been bantering about these rules for a couple days now. So, let us know. Good, bad, ugly, in between. We love to hear from you. One last thing before we let you go here this week is if you're in the Houston area this Saturday, so tomorrow at the time that this video is released, the 11th at TDECU, the Houston Roughnecks are opening up their training camp. So this is the first time as a fan you'll be able to see 2 XFL teams on the field at the same time. You'll have the Houston Roughnecks and the Tampa Bay Vipers, and I couldn't be more excited. I'll be there covering the event, but if you're in the area, you should check it out as well. I can't suggest it enough. These events are a great way to learn about the XFL from the people building it from the ground up. And since all 8 teams are in town, who knows, there may be a few surprises there. We may see and hear from Commissioner Oliver Luck. This hasn't been confirmed, but this is what I would guess may happen considering this is a fan engagement event. But hey, we look forward to seeing you there. If you see me, say hello. If not, we'll have some footage for you next week on This Week in the XFL. But overall, that's about it for this week. It was a huge week. It was a great week. It was one of the best weeks ever. And we're getting excited. Like we mentioned, we're less than 1 month away from the XFL kickoff. Don't forget, we're doing that live stream February 7th with Jade Ash of the XFL Newsroom Unhinged podcast, Tron Hawkins of This Is the XFL podcast, and hey, my man XFL Delivery Guy's coming through. And we're going to bring you all the latest. We're going to do a season preview. We're going to talk about the games coming up that week. So make sure you're subscribed and you click the bell to see the alerts when we go live. But before we let you go, if you didn't know, we're also on Facebook and Twitter. So give us a follow at XFL Newsroom for all the latest news. And since we're on YouTube, make sure you drop a like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to see when we're dropping new videos. Some are going to be live and some are going to be pre-recorded just like this one. So until next time, sign you up.